Hi guys, so today I'm going to do a very brief introduction to the principle of zero products. We are going to be talking about the principle of zero products a lot throughout the semesters, and I'm going to refer to it as that name, so I just want to make sure you guys know what I'm referring to. I promise you, you already know what the principle of zero products is. You just don't know that this is what it's called. So let's quickly talk about what the principle of zero products is, because we're going to be using it when we're solving polynomial equations. Okay, so let's jump in. So let's start with a quick warm-up. If I told you that 5 times x equals 0, what would x have to be? Yes, x has to be 0, right? If I'm multiplying 5 by a number and getting 0, then that number has to be 0. You guys know this. Well, that's exactly what the principle of zero products says. The principle of zero products says that for any real numbers, a and b, if a times b equals 0, then either a equals 0 or b equals 0, which basically just means if I'm multiplying two numbers together and the answer is 0, one of those numbers, one of those factors, has to be 0. So if we look at that first example again, right? We're multiplying two numbers, two factors, I should say, together, 5 times x, and it equals 0. So we know that x has to be 0. This is the only way that when we multiply 5 by this number, we get 0. Let's look at a second example. In this example, we have 5 times quantity x plus 1 equals 0. So again, the principle of zero products says to us, okay, we have two factors being multiplied together. One factor is 5, one factor is x plus 1. If they're being multiplied together and they equal 0, well, one of those factors had to be 0. We know 5 isn't 0, so then x plus 1 had to be 0. Which means, if x plus 1 equals 0, we can just do a simple solve here, subtract 1 from each side. Then x has to equal -1, right? So the principle of zero products helped us to solve that, because we know by the principle of zero products, if 5 times x plus 1 equals 0, well then x plus 1 had to equal 0. If x plus 1 equals 0, then x had to be -1, right? Because -1 plus 1, that gives us 0. So let's look at one more example. In this example, we have x times quantity x plus 1 equals 0. Again, by the principle of zero products, we have two factors being multiplied together. They equal 0. So one of those factors has to be 0. And here, since they're both unknown, well, we have two cases here. The first case, x could be 0, right? That first factor could be 0, okay? Or the second case, quantity x plus 1, that second factor could be 0. And in that case, we already know what x would have to be. It would have to be -1, right? We figured that out up here. So the principle of zero products is really handy-dandy because it helps us in solving polynomials. When we have a polynomial and we factor it, if we just set that polynomial equal to 0, we can figure out what x is, what our variable is. So we're going to be using that a lot. So I just wanted to sort of just refresh your brain. I'm sure you already knew what the principle of zero products was, but now we've given it this name. So when you hear me refer to it by that name, you'll know what I'm talking about. All right? So when two factors are being multiplied together and they equal 0, one of those factors has to be 0.